welcome back to Writing Done Right. This is a special outdoor edition. I'm going to kind of do these outdoors and stuff when we find something that's relevant to the news, so we're not going to have a blog post or anything about the article here as well. I just want to do a video here just for your own information. Particularly as authors, if you're watching my channel, I assume you're probably an author, and this is actually something that has come out in the current pandemic world where public libraries across the United States and maybe even the world are closing down. Well, there is the Internet Archive, which overall I just think is a wonderful site. It keeps archives of all of the internet things. It's a wonderful organization, but they did a really stupid thing, kind of claiming, hey, we're just filling a need as public libraries close. And what happens is they've opened up their service that you can now get pretty much any ebook that there's a copy of there. They'll pass out and lend out as many copies as conceivably possible. I actually first saw this kind of accidentally. I was looking at a book and I was like, well, I kind of want to get the physical book, but I'm not even sure I can find a store that's even open to get it. And buying a physical book from Amazon right now could take a longer period of time. It might be shorter, might be longer, depending. And I'm like, well, let's look into ebook options. And I always look for DRM-free options first. And I see that the book is available there if you created an account. And I'm like, that might be worth it. I don't know if it's worth it. I don't know. I'll have to think about it, whether it's worth it. But then I kind of stumble upon the article, and to find out what they're doing, I am not going to be creating an account over there. Now, understand this. That when we're talking about digital book formats, which can include audiobooks and include ebooks, you can get audiobooks and ebooks rented from a library. And the way the licensing on these work is that you have a library buys the license for it, and it's usually a little bit more of an expensive library for an e-publication, so usually about 2 or 3 times the price of an audiobook. This is to make sure that when a library buys an audiobook, the author gets a little bit more compensation than they just buying it once and then people can use it infinitely. But the library has a certain number of licenses, so if they buy an ebook or an audiobook license, they can only rent out that book at a given number of times. So it has to be out and then brought back, sent out and then brought back, sent out and then brought back. So if a library has a lot of requests for a particular book, they might buy 5 digital licenses, in which case the book can be lent out 5 different times, and they can't lend it out to a 6th until one of the previous people brings the book back. This is make sure that authors are getting the royalties that they need. Same thing functions with ebooks and with audiobooks. But what happened with the Internet Archive, what they did is they changed their model because in their viewpoint, hey, libraries are closed down, so we're just going to go ahead and instead of just being able to lend out one of these copies of the book, they're going to say no limits. Anybody can come in and rent out any number of books because your public libraries are closed. And that is very wrong of them. And if Internet Archive is listening, please stop. So I'm going to just read some excerpts here from the article on Ars Technica. Authors fume as online libraries lends unlimited free books. And one author says this is started up as a piracy site, which honestly, I have to look at this and agree with. And some of the comments like, people are whining. Yeah, because it takes a lot to write a book. And if my books are just available for free download, unlimited any other places, that is a serious violation of my copyright. What they should have done is they should have approached these different authors or publishers, usually the publishers they would approach, and say, hey, we want to increase the number of licenses we have. Can we get a discount on a bulk license deal? If they contact me, I will give them a discount on a bulk license deal to have all of my books in there, and I'll get them copies. If they need physical copies, I'll say, hey, here's the digitals. I already have them scanned. Go do what you want, and I'll mail you a copy or 2 of each of the books. That's fine. But they didn't do that. They just decided that since libraries are closed and libraries are where people get free stuff anyway, let's just open it up for free all around. And so it says, for almost a decade, the Internet Archive online library, best known for its Internet Wayback Machine, has let users borrow scanned digital copies of books held in its warehouse. Until recently, users could only check out as many copies as the organization had physical copies. That is the way all libraries work. Okay, so they were operating as the rest of the libraries work. Last week, the Internet Archive announced it was eliminating that restriction, allowing unlimited number of users to check out a book simultaneously. The Internet Archive calls this a national emergency library. Now, that's a serious problem because if we have 1 million people servicing things at, let's say, just 10,000 libraries, then the authors are still getting some royalty for their books inside of those libraries, and likewise they should, because for those of us who are authors, or if you're not an author and you're just interested in this channel, it takes a long time. For example, I started working on the Synaptergy book. I think it was either in July or August. It's set to come out in May. That's almost an entire year. I have spent evenings and mornings and evenings and mornings and evenings. We've written the book. I've had beta testers out on it. I have to get the book typeset. I have to do the create the ebook designs. I have to do the audiobooks and then get these out. Well, if the Internet Archive gets a copy and just says, hey, anyone can come over here and just grab it, there is no difference between that and downloading it from a site. It's just that it technically expires in a short period of time. But it still seriously hurts the bottom line of any author that is using that system. All right. So it says initial media coverage of the service was strongly positive. New Yorker declared it a gift to readers everywhere. But as word of the news service spread, it triggered a backlash from authors and publishers, and likewise it should. You see, there's another company, I think they're based in Florida. I believe it's a company incorporated as Do Not Pay. They have these interesting ways to try and get around paying for services. So their latest one was based on Netflix. You can download the browser extension and it will take your browser cookie and send it to your friend so your friend can get Netflix on your account without having your password. And it's like, oh, that's great. No, that's called theft. It's called theft. All right? If you want to, and I'm not a huge fan of Netflix, but if you want to use Netflix, please pay for it. Otherwise, you're driving up the cost for everybody else. I don't agree with the modern streaming world. I don't use any modern streaming services, but I recognize it's a valid business model. If you're going to use it, you're going to pay for it. And that's the same thing we have here. All right. So as a reminder, there is no author bailout, booksellers bailout, or publishers bailout, says author Alexander Chi. The Internet Archive's emergency copyright grab endangers many already terrible danger. Now, that quote is not entirely accurate from Alexander Chi. My business that I do all my publishing through is an LLC. It does qualify under the bailouts. I will likely see a personal bailout check as an individual if those things happen. I'm not really asking for it, but if it shows up, it shows up. But my business as a registered LLC in the state of Pennsylvania, I have the ability to take advantage of those SBA loans under this new bill. I have that ability. So yes, indeed, there is a bailout for authors and publishers. But does that mean that I want to take the money from the government and just say, hey, socialism everywhere? No, it's not. It's not actually what I want to see happen. I would like to see our economy stay intact, where I can provide a service and people like that service. And if you like the service, you pay for the service. If you don't like the service, you don't buy the service. I don't want a government handout. I want to earn my work, not be handed it. All right, so, but I do agree with author James Gleck. This is a tarted up piracy site. I agree with that. The Authors Guild, a leading authors organization, wrote Friday it was appalled by the Internet Archive's moves. We are shocked that the Internet Archive would use the current epidemic as an excuse to push copyright law further out to the edges, and in so doing harm authors, many of whom are already struggling, the group wrote. The Association of American Publishers also blasted the project last Friday. We are stunned by the Internet Archive's aggressive, unlawful, and opportunistic attack on the right of authors and publishers in the midst of the novel thing, wrote the group, which represents dozens of publishers, including most of the largest ones in the United States. Now, there is a blog post from the Internet Archive, and it says right now there are today 650 million books that tax-paying citizens in the U.S. have paid to access that are sitting on shelves in closed libraries inaccessible to them. To meet this unprecedented need at scales never seen, we suspended wait lists in our lending collection. Now, there is a lot of mistruths in here because the Internet Archive does not give out print copies of books. If you have an online account with your library, you can likely still go through the process and do some digital stuff. I don't actually do digital library lending, so I'm not 100% sure about that. But to my understanding, that is the case. So really nothing has changed from the author's perspective here as far as digital libraries is concerned. And basically they're saying, hey, citizens have already paid to access these books. We're just giving them to them. Well, there's a big difference. Go back to that argument I was making earlier. If there's 500 million readers and 10,000 libraries, that's 500 million divided by the 10,000. Those 10,000 libraries have paid royalty fees. Internet Archive is now one company. And now they're just saying, hey, we have a copy. Anybody can have it. No waiting lists, no anything. And that seriously hurts the royalties of any author. And ask any author, we're not rolling in money unless you're one of the top 1 billionth of 1% or whatever. And I exaggerated that number a little bit. But it does say the post includes a section addressing common questions about the emergency library. One question addressed: what is the legal basis for its digital lending during normal times? And he argues it is legal under copyright's fair use doctrine. That is completely patently false. And now I can't say it's patently false. This says no court has ruled on this. But no, it is a violation of the copyright to grab a copy and then distribute it to as many people as you want. That is a direct violation of the copyright law. All right. According to a Cornell copyright scholar, James Grimmelman, about the legality of the program, he seems skeptical. Quote, there's no specific pandemic exception under copyright law. Copyright's fair use exception is open-ended, so theoretically a judge could decide emergency circumstances justify their action, but there are few examples of courts making such a big leap. At a minimum, the Internet Archive is taking a substantial legal risk. I gotta say, though, that the Internet Archive is a struggling organization. If they find themselves at the beck and call of a massive legal lawsuit with every publisher, the Internet Archive could die. And that would be a tragic thing because the Internet Archive is a great thing. Please, Internet Archive, stop this stupid policy. We're all suffering, and you're just making it worse for us authors. That's my thought on the comments on this situation. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below.